Hey guys, welcome back to Free Game after our little hiatus. Our owner of the studio, Mike, was in Japan for the Olympics, and we just got back. Danielle Graves is my co-host today. I want to shout out Jeremy. He's actually helping us run an office up in South Carolina. Daniela Simina, can you say it for me?
Bioenergetic healing practitioner.
Bioenergetic healing practitioner, and then Danielle Serghi, physicist, and he's just been blowing our mind the whole time just before the show's even started.
A mind-blowing physicist.
Mind-blowing physicist. So again, guys, the whole concept of Free Game is just unrestricted talk. The whole concept is to get people to start thinking again and acknowledging, the specialness of what's going on Earth. We'll start off, and I'm just going to kind of start off with how when we met at the pizza shop the other day, Daniel kind of wanted to vet us and let us know that he liked the show, and he was actually impressed with it. Asked us, maybe cursed a little bit less, but other than that, was a fan. And we started off talking about coherence, because I was asking more or less like how I get these signs or these feelings, these intuitions, and they just always come true for me. And I just know my intuition, and he kind of explained it with coherence. Do you want to kind of start off explaining to the listener what coherence is and how that might actually work?
Sure. First of all, thank you for inviting us. I am very much appreciative of the title of your podcast, because freedom, in my mind, goes only with information and responsibility and social engagement. So you pretty much tick all the boxes. Thank you again for inviting us.
Of course.
Coherence. If you think at those guys that row a boat, right? When they row the boat in the same phase, when they pull at the same time and they push at the same time, that boat almost flies. Coherence is about putting things together in a consonant way.
So what do you mean by consonant way?
Think at if we pull together an object, if we pull at the same time, we make it easy. If we pull at different times, we may end up by opposing each other.
Okay.
So you would have a coherence or decoherence of our effort. And what I was thinking, what I was speculating, facing your testimony that your thoughts usually come true after a while, that made me think at why some people's wishes get fulfilled and others don't. And here I may go against at least half of the motivational speakers or everybody, right? You have to be coherent between what you consciously want, where your emotions go, what your mind wants to do, and the individuality, the identity that you have in doing that. And when all those things get aligned, that usually somehow energy follows intent, which is a mantra that you will hear it everywhere in energy healing and everywhere. How energy follows intent, maybe we can touch this later.
Okay.
Right. Well, just from observation, I'm his fiance, so I've been watching him for a while. He'll get a sign, he will have an intention to act on it, and then he'll do massive action, right? It has to be in that flow for it to actually work out.
And signs for me are different all the time. The way I look at it is like, if you consistently follow them, then your ancestors or your angels or your guides or whoever it is that's giving you the signs knows how to communicate with you. Like they're learning your language and you're learning theirs. And then sometimes, like when I get super coherent, that's the way I put it, like I'll speak in electronics change and stuff like that. Like she's seen it, Jeremy's seen it a bunch of times. I don't understand exactly why, but it's cool as hell. Like I hope it continues. I don't know if you could connect that maybe with Reiki or like energy, or how would you guys have an assumption? Because I would like to know more about it so I can keep, I don't think it's going anywhere, but.
Yeah, I have more than just one thought, and I'm very glad to share. First, I would like to underscore the idea that underline the idea that we are electromagnetic systems You don't have to be an energy healer. This is very well made clear in science, in various disciplines, that the human body is basically a some trillion volts battery, and we do generate a field. Now, add to this what Danielle has described earlier, and look, you pointed out that coherence. So whatever we do, our intentions, our thoughts, our deeper underlying purpose, what really holds true to us, amplifies the intensity of our own field. And let's put a pin on that. What surrounds us also does have an electromagnetic field. And while it's not common occurrence, I'm not going to say that every single time I'm seeing a patient for any kind of healing session, bulbs will just burst in the room. While this is not commonplace, it does happen that in the process of healing, by changing the level of vibration, the energetic signature, if you will, of the interacting systems, we have occasional outcomes such as electronics interfering with each other, or bulbs popping in the room, or it's not common though, but it does happen.
Which is so cool. I remember you saying, so just a precursor, I met Daniela through Danielle and we went to do like a Reiki learning lesson. I got my base 1 Reiki, and you were saying that you had turned on a car engine that died doing it, if I'm correct.
Yes, so it was several of us. We were like 4 students, and myself, a teacher. It was at the end of a bioenergetic healing class that I taught. And in the parking lot, this lady who also lives out of town couldn't start her car. And after exhausting all the technical available means to get that started, including using the jump cables, while waiting for the car for to receive service, receive help, we started to do basically energy healing. So we put our hands there and energize that the battery, and visualizing, really feeling, really wanting to hear that engine roar, and the car getting in gear. And at some point I'm getting the clear message that, okay, that's it. It was a sense. It was like an inner voice saying, okay, that's it. And
when you know, you just know.
Yeah, when you know, you just know, right? And the lady goes in the car, gets the key in, turns the key, ram, ram, ram. Engine roars, car starts. So.
And then that ties back into what you said about the coherence, like wanting it and then doing it.
And it was the team. It was like a joint effort. It wasn't just me.
You can put alignment instead of coherence, and it will be just as intelligible. It will mean the same thing, right? When all the things are aligned, in this case, the energy of those people were aligned to the same goal. It may look like magic, but again, magic is only what we do not understand. If it happens, it's natural.
Mm-hmm. I think magic is natural. It's like prayer, the power of prayer. I think that's magic. I think the stigma is the word.
Yeah.
Yes, and basically when we say magic, we say something that gets out of the present framework of understanding of our humanity, understanding the universe, right? Maybe some other guys would laugh, and or probably will smile because they have to be smarter than us, and so they don't laugh, they smile at us, right? But if you look at the continuum of vibrations, right? If you take it from low to high, you will see that at every stage you have receptors, and you have sensors for that particular vibration, right? I see between some red and some violet. A bee would see ultraviolet. A serpent would see infrared, right? So there is a continuum. Now the things is the question is, what happens when the vibration goes even higher? Because they usually change fundamentally the properties. And the same electromagnetism that Daniela was saying, it's only one of the 4 forces that we reckon today. in physics, underline, okay? electromagnetism, if it's low frequency, is just heat. This is how you heat a pizza with a resistor, right? Then if it goes higher is radio waves. If it goes even higher, it's light. If it goes even higher, it's X-rays or gamma rays. Who knows what happens if it goes even higher?
And then what causes it to go higher?
You see here, I would turn it and I would say what causes it to go lower.
Okay.
Because the higher the frequency, the higher the energy. It looks like it kind of you wouldn't believe if I will tell you that something of low energy makes high energy, but you would accept rather easily that something that has a high energy will lose some energy or will downgrade that energy in a inferior, let's say in a lower energy form, right? So at some it's in my mind it's a game of octaves going down by halving frequencies than us doing something special with ourselves to increase our energy. When we say that we increase our energy, which I believe that we all should do, what we do is that in fact we polish our lenses, we polish our sensors, and we become aware of the higher energies that exist. And maybe all those things that we can call angels, thrones, name them, fairies, all those entities, realities, forms of energy manifestation would be probably just some energy frequencies for which we do not have, or most of us, we don't have receptors for.
They're on a different vibration.
Correct.
So like the fairies, that's going to kind of tie in. I just read something about them. Basically, I've been looking into like Italian like witchcraft, like Strega and stuff like that, because that's my ancestry. Danielle and I's first date, basically, like not basically, we did like magic, and I just had this feeling that she was Diana, who I just found out was like the queen of witches, and then she kept saying she felt like there was 3 women like hovering around her, and we've done like different things with like energy before, where like she gets Hecate all the time, who's the queen of witches. Right. Yeah. So Antonio, my buddy that was on the last podcast, he was losing his shit because he was like, "Oh my God, Hecate, I have tattoos of her." We didn't know who she was, and so like I keep feeling like they choose her, and like want us to do like this whole thing, almost like create like the garden or like free game, like elevate it. So fairies, angels, all kind of the same thing. And then again, it seems like they choose her and they want me to like do these other things, and all the signs lead to it, like wild shit. Like it's hard to even explain, like just go off the top. But I'll see auras and colors, and then like I'll hear like a voice or something. I'll be like, "Nono, is that you?" And I'll look to the right, and all of a sudden like a sign will say my Nono's name, and then like a song will change, and it's like, all right, cool. Like you're clearly communicating with me. How would you explain that? I guess from your background, because I know you have a background in some of this stuff, right?
Yep, I do. So I think there's different ways to look at it. Let me go with the simplest. I think that, in my humble opinion, I don't like talking about extrasensory perception, because bottom line, when we see, or those of us who can see in multiple spectrums of frequency, let's put it that way, what we see is not necessarily available to everybody, which doesn't mean that what we see isn't really there. As Daniel mentioned before, there are forms of life that can see in infrared. I wouldn't call my cat clairvoyant just because it sees in the dark much better than I do.
Oh, that makes sense.
I would say that the cat's physiology is adapted to that kind of environment. And the seeing part I can still see with my eyes. So it's not an extra sense. It's, let's say, a better evolved sense of sight. Bottom line, this so-called extrasensory perception is nothing but a process of neurophysiological refinement. So it is a constant polishing, refining of skills, senses that are already there, and
I'm going to jump in for the
Yes,
listener.
please.
Basically, what she's saying is that, correct me if I'm misinterpreting this, but basically it's in your brain, but if you work it out, it gets stronger like a muscle.
Absolutely. That's the best way of putting it. Whatever sense you choose to develop, then of course that sense, and this is why we have yoga techniques. We have techniques coming from different native indigenous practices. We have Native American ways of approaching shamanic practices. We have techniques coming from Italian witchcraft, from Strega, from Romanian witchcraft, so there's a multitude of ways to produce this neurophysiological, achieve this neurophysiological refinement. Now, it's worth adding that like everybody has its own talent, its own strength. So there might be easier for some to develop the sense of sight and start seeing things, perceiving auras and colors. Some people are like born clairaudient, clairsentient, so their perception channels may be different. But nonetheless, I'm 100% on the same page with, look, it's in there, and it is a matter of personal choice and training to bring it forth.
Antonio was saying too, like, he said basically the issue with like modern society is because we've now called it like whiteness or blackness. What happens is like white people like, so you didn't, right? So you're Romanian, you're in touch with your Romanian roots. A lot of white people have lost contact with like, or touch with their Nordic roots or their Germanic roots, and that's where their magic is. And it doesn't mean like devil, or it's actually the opposite. It really means like God. Like it's like they use like Psalms and like Bible verses and things like that.
You see, if you allow me to inject here something,
please.
right? That's one fundamental axiom of Hermeticism. The fundamental axiom of Hermeticism is as above, so below, right? So let's keep this in mind, pin it down as somebody was saying here, okay? So keep this in mind. There is a variability, right? I cannot do the same things that you can do, and so basically every individual, every form of life, every species has some particular form of adaptation, some particular features. Now, in the end, we have to rely one onto others' perception, forces, talents, whatever, because we all explore humanity, right? I do not need to go on the moon. Neil Armstrong did it for me. There are lots of things that I do not need to experience myself because I trust my fellow human to have experienced it for me, right? Good. So this would be one line of attack. The other line of attack is that you always need some form of transducer, right? You need a microscope. You need something that, a piezo crystal that transforms vibration into electricity, right? Maybe a fairy is...
Wait. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt on the fairy. How does it go back to the crystal thing? Because I have stones on me right now. I love crystals and stones. How does that work? We can circle back to this.
No. I'll finish my line with fairies, and we can go back to crystals.
Okay, because I want to hear about fairies. Like, I'm all over the place.
Right? So you need translators, right? You need educators. You need adapters of knowledge, right? Between the immaterial and the material, meaning that material is something that we can measure according to the materialist physics that started well before Galileo and Newton, but okay, and today. And immaterial, which is belief, religion, energy. I'll come back to the energy thing, to an energy word, okay? There might be some transducers. In my mind, fairies are at the cusp between immaterial and material. Somebody has to do this thing for me. If something that exists in the mind comes to exist in matter. Somehow this transition has to be facilitated. It requires some knowledge. It requires some instruments, a framework. What do I know? I know that if I need to do something, I need to think at that something. I need to put some things together and take some things out, if you remember my example with the pencil. And I have to do all these things with a lot of knowledge, maybe with previous trial and error, and only in the end I can produce a pen or something, an object useful for somebody else, right? So if you want, I materialize. An architect or architects and constructors and building engineers, they materialize a building. It's nothing magic about that.
Right.
That's in alignment with Hermeticism, right? The Kabbalion mental transmutation,
Exactly.
right? The
It's in
universe
line
is
with all
mental.
Exactly.
So we're creating it kind of mentally.
Correct.
And it manifests.
And in Kybalion, where you have the law of vibration, this is basically what quantum mechanics says.
I was just thinking, I was associating again because my original background, I mean, again, I love the Bible and Jesus. It's the teaching from the church is where I usually get my beef with. But like, for me, it would be the angel that comes to Mary and brings Jesus. It would be like, that would almost be like a fairy, right? Like doing the work. Or no?
Who knows how many layers,
It's a fair answer.
how many layers of spiritual energy and material energy had to come into play so that you get Jesus. And yes, maybe Gabriel was just the announcer of this project or process approaching conclusion. Well, conclusion.
Right.
Temporary conclusion. Everything is a beginning for something else, right? But if you want me to turn very quickly to crystals,
Yes.
what is special about crystals is that the atoms repeat the order at distances vastly bigger than the distance between them. So even a crystal that to your eyes looks imperfect, taking into account that you have few billions atoms in a mill, all those atoms will be in coherence if you want.
Okay.
They will vibrate in consonance, and this is what makes a crystal powerful.
So like there is when I feel the crystals, I can feel the power.
You can feel the power, and here is a bit, you see crystals, okay, and I'll announce the theme now, and maybe we can go to it later, right? So the theosophic writings at the beginning of the century, Alice Bailey, she starts by writing under channeling the Ascended Master Jal Kul about the consciousness of the atom. Nowadays there is a guy called Don Hoffman, if memory serves, that talks about the consciousness agent. A consciousness agent would be a small automaton that has a perception, is able to take a decision based on that perception, and based on that decision takes an action, and that action becomes the source of a new perception. Okay? Now, an atom, if we define consciousness as the ability to sense something in the environment and take some action according to what you sense, then an atom of sodium and an atom of chloride will sense each other and will take that decision to become a molecule of salt. So there is a low level of consciousness. Aggregates, the bigger they become, I don't know why anybody would be against. The more complex they become, the level of consciousness those aggregates get as an aggregate increases, right? Therefore, if I accept this as a discussion, and you see that what the consciousness of the atom so defined and the consciousness automaton that I just described, they are basically the same thing, right? But then they interact, and then one's decision becomes source of perception for the other. So now you begin to have loops of all sort of kinds. If you arrive at, now if we turn from a couple of atoms to the crystal, it's almost like you can educate a crystal. I don't know. So I am doing energy work, and I work with crystals, right? And it so happens that my master's in physics was about crystals. I mean, half of what I was doing was crystals, right? It's the physics of condensed matter and solid state physics, which basically it's about crystals. So this is why I have a certain apprehension in working with crystals, because they can become extremely powerful. So if you work with a crystal that is natural, that Mother Earth produced it, it's one thing. You consecrate it, you clean it, you instruct it, it works. I've got a crystal that was created in laboratory. Much bigger, absolutely perfect. I cannot describe it in other terms. I had to instruct, I had to school that crystal to help me in healing.
With your intention.
Yes, but I had to educate him. It's somehow like if I would tell a crystal, a natural crystal, transmute energies, that crystal that has I don't know how many millions and zillions of billions of years in the crust, he would know what transmutation is. My crystal that was created in laboratory from molecules that had no previous impressions had to be taught what transmutation is. It's like a kid that you have to take it by hand and say.
How do you teach a crystal? What do you mean by that? Or tell a crystal to transmute something?
In my case, it was just addressing it like a child. I would not be able to.
Okay.
But then again, and this nobody can take it from me because I know that it happened. Okay, it happened twice in my. It happened in a number of occasions in my life, because I was doing thin films, semiconductor films, whatever. If you think that something will happen, you will help that thing happening.
Goes back to the coherence at the beginning.
I know that it's. Materialists, physicists will stifle me, whatever. Okay, will lapidate me. I lived that, so nobody can. You understand? Nobody can take this from me. I know that if I think at that process happening one way, it happens in one way and in exactly the same conditions. Somebody else tries to replicate it. It doesn't get it because he's not thinking those atoms the way I think them. And it was a meditation. I mean, I've spent weeks looking at the Mendeleev table at the crystalline structure of those atoms. I don't know what happened. If you would ask me what happened, I don't know. But I educated me, and probably I began to be able to educate them. I don't know how to say.
So if I would tie it back in the beginning where I was saying, like, when I feel like I get these signs because I consistently act in a certain way, so they know how to communicate with me. Like, again, back to the Bible when it says, like, I think when it says, like, you know, the burning bush talked to Moses, it might have been the same way we're saying, like, talk to the crystal, like, in a different way, but the communication was there. Like, again, the translations of the words, I think, is where people get thrown off with things. Like, when I say, like, I see things coming, I don't truly mean, like, I see them. I, like, just sense them and know. That's kind of how I'm understanding what you were saying right there. Like,
and probably it was not easy for you to believe that you.
At first,
like,
I thought,
it wasn't for me. I mean, it was a process for me until now. You see me saying it like it took me years.
It took me years. I'm 35. I started this process at 21, and like now I like get it, and I know when I know. Before I would misinterpret things, and I would like da 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 da. I don't really do that now.
Yeah, no, I had to cross out a lot of explanations.
Yeah.
Until this one stayed, okay, was there. And then based on that explanation, I've been able to replicate it in a different environment. So, sorry, this is science. People say, oh, scientific. Right? What is scientific? Scientific means that I am measuring something in a way, and then I send you, look, listen, I did this contraption and I measured this thing. Could you please try it? And you try your contraption done by you, And if you get pretty much the same, not exactly, pretty much the same thing, you will believe, we both would believe that we are onto something, right?
Right.
That's exactly what science does. So
Well, science
everything
just
is-
comes from the word for knowledge, right? It's all about knowing.
it is it is about operating on the edge between knowing and unknowing. Okay, when I began study physics, I got the realization that physics is not what I know, is not about what physics knows, is about what physics doesn't know. You have
Okay.
to push that boundary little by little, and it's painful, and it's hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that work onto that same thing, and they have to trust each other, and they have to believe into what each other is doing. So you see that belief is not just a religious stuff.
Well, it always comes back to faith in the Bible. That was his hardest point. He's like, you just have to have faith. People could not even have faith in themselves. So how are they going to have faith in others?
And the parable is the faith of the mustard seed, right? It grows.
Mm-hmm.
It starts off small and it grows, and then you can move mountains, in literal or metaphorical.
And what if you want the footnote that probably needs to be done when Jesus said that if you would have faith as a mustard seed, you would be able to tell those mountains move and it will move. The footnote would be, if your bodies are aligned
Yeah. Yeah.
and you have the faith.
Makes sense.
That makes complete sense. And then, why do you think, like anybody's thought on this, that there is almost, it feels like a pushback, not a pushback. It seems like there's actually huge curiosity now. I think the internet's going to help that, even though I'm talking about, I just deleted my social media off my phones and stuff. I think, back to the Bible, it talks about the changing of the age. Revelation just means to reveal. Apocalypse just means to reveal. Of the new age is just a time when everybody can see. But it's almost like there's a theoretical fear of beyond the material, but then at the same time, everybody wants God. So it's this weird, I don't know how to make sense of other people's thoughts on that. I don't know if anybody might be able to help me on that one.
I think we can all acknowledge it's a shift, right, in some form. But whether it goes from material to spiritual, which is my hope, is kind of the gray area, right?
You see, we are at the, maybe, I don't want to say at the end, but we are at we are reaping today the benefits of a mental effort that started long time ago, but it became manifest with Galileo and Newton when the modern science begins. In about the same time, Descartes, Cartesius came with the idea that the universe is a machine. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean that the universe is a machine. He just found a simplification because the universe is too complex to address it in all its complexity. So this is what you would do. You would create a simpler model. You push that model as much as you can push it, and then you make a better model, and so on and so forth. Now, this universe as a machine took us to being able to send Voyager 2 beyond the limits of the solar system. It took us to do chemicals, do drugs, do semiconductors, do everything, telephones. So we are a material civilization. We reap the benefits of centuries of material science. I'm not saying that we forgot God, but if you look at the history, what they decided at some point in time was, listen, we scientists are going to deal with what we can measure, and you guys in church, religion, will deal with what we cannot measure. And then we don't talk to each other anymore. So you are at the present day when it looks like there is an opposition between science and religion, where I see none.
Same. I actually think science proves it. I think science.
I do believe that they will converge, but again, you have to think out of the box, and you have to renounce deliberately at considering the universe as a dumb machine, as a cause-effect machine. I mean, material. What you can see it if you don't see it, if it doesn't exist.
So that goes back to kind of Schrodinger's cat. Not back to. So Schrodinger's cat, for those of you that are unfamiliar, I'm going to explain it in my way, and then probably correct me if I explain anything wrong. Schrodinger's cat was a thought experiment by Erwin Schrödinger, this famous quantum physicist. And in it, basically, if you put a cat in a box and you say that this thing of poison is going to go off that's going to kill the cat at, we'll say, minute 5, right? Before you open the box at minute 5, at that exact moment, there's a 50% chance the cat's alive and dead. And in that moment, the cat's both alive and dead until it's observed. And this has been proven. We don't know exactly what it means, but it basically means everything is possible until it's observed, and then it is.
We go into quantum mechanics, which is very interesting. I mean, and again, I don't want to steal here completely the show, so I'll turn it back to Daniela very soon. But quantum mechanics is very demonstrable, right? So we demonstrated it beyond any shred of a doubt. But you will find not fewer physicists that say we do not understand it. Nobody understands quantum mechanics. No, that means that understandings are split, and there are interpretations. Okay? What we agree with is that quantum mechanics is that nature, looked at from a quantum perspective, is discrete in the sense that things can be only on certain levels, not anywhere between those levels, for one. And the other thing is that it's based on probabilities. At times, you cannot say with certitude what happens. You have to allow probabilities. And here there were a number of interpretations, and only in the so-called Copenhagen interpretation, Bohr and Heisenberg agreed with, you would have that cat, as long as you do not know, the probabilities would be 50-50. Right? The moment where you open the box, you will see if the radioactive material that was supposed there, because you need a random process to kill the cat. So the complete experiment is that the complete thought experiment is that you put some radioactive material that after a certain dose would kill the cat. And you put the cat, you close the box. If that radioactive material radioactivates, so to say, then the cat dies. If it doesn't, the cat is still alive. You have no way to know until you open the box. So the experiment was more to underline the idea that there are things that we cannot know until some moment. But it goes to a larger a question of observability and what is an observer, because the other thing fundamental that happens in quantum mechanics is that you need an observer, and the observer is part of the experiment, and in the end everything and everybody is an observer. So the other interpretation, just for completeness, the other important interpretation is a Bohm-de-Broglie interpretation that says that no, it's quantum theory can be understood as deterministic, but then you have to accept non-locality. Meaning that there are things here that influence things there outside of the relativistic framework of Einstein.
And that ties into entanglement, right? Non-locality is basically entanglement.
Exactly. And the difference is basically that if you understand that you transmit information via energy, so if I send the information about my status, okay, so we both are in some status. We discussed before, and there is some connection between us, okay? And now Daniela and Danielle, somewhere independently, one of them measures your state, and the other one measures my state, right? And the entanglement shows that because we talked once in a while, when they measure at the same time or after, at simultaneous moments or not, if I say something, that will be probably connected with what you are going to say, because we discussed before. If you want a very, okay? I am not sending you the information with a pigeon, because if the information about my status reaches you with an energy form, that energy has to make it from me to you in a finite time, that is the distance between us divided by the speed of light. But if information is transmitted as information, not as energy, then there is non-locality. The information can go at the same moment from here to there. There is no need for an energetic vehicle. And we see this, and now I'll pass it to you because you do this much better than I do. This is why you can heal at a distance. And this is proven. It's proven beyond, again, it is proven, right? Statistically proven, if you want.
I'm going to ask you a question about healing at a distance right now, actually, and ties into the entanglement. Danielle was with me when it happened. Talking about that time with Bobby.
Oh, yes.
So I have this older guy that works for me, or works with me, I guess I should say, that I helped him out a lot, and he used to call me his Jesus. Like, he used to, like, text me every morning, be like, hey, like, da-da-da, right? And Danielle, is one of her first times coming up and, like, visiting, and before I go to sleep every night, I say a prayer. So I'm praying, and I'm like, I hope I can be a help to people. And apparently he must have been praying at the same time. I all of a sudden felt something hit my heart, and I don't have anxiety. I fell to the ground and was like freaking out that I was having a heart attack. I was looking at Danielle and was like, yo, did you just do this? Like, what just happened? Like, I'm freaking out. And all of a sudden I just knew it was Bobby. Like, when you know, which is the weirdest thing ever for me to think of Bobby like at that. So I call him up. And as soon as he answers, he starts crying, and he goes, how did you know? How did you take that? He said he felt like he was going to have a heart attack and was praying to Jesus to save him. And it got sent to me. And maybe because my heart's strong enough, I handled it. But she was there. I don't have anxiety. I fucking fell to the ground and was, like, shaking on the ground and was looking at her and was like, yo, what just happened? Like, what are you doing? Like, I couldn't, like, move or get up off the ground. And then all of a sudden, I was like, it's Bobby. It's not her. It's Bobby. And just, like, I'll be okay. And I called him. It's like late, and he answered and just goes, how did you know? You are my Jesus. Like, I was just, and he goes, I was gonna have a heart attack, I think. And I was like, I think I just almost did, dude. What did you just send me? But that happened. Like, again, like,
That was wild.
nobody could tell me it didn't happen. She watched it happen. I didn't know Bobby's going through heart issues or anything. So like the healing at a distance, I've unintentionally done that.
So before getting into what happens at a distance, across distance, let's talk a bit of what happens in proximity. I don't really use the term healing because that has kind of medical connotations, and if somebody comes to me, I'm not really healing them. What happens is I facilitate the other person coming into a better balance, inner balance, reach that level of homeostasis where actually natural healing processes can take over and carry on within that body, whether body in its entirety with the energetic and the physical substrates and the emotional. So I'd like for us to think there is a term called entrainment. And entrainment is simply explained as back to electromagnetic systems, to electric or electromagnetic systems coming together, locking into phase, and influencing one another. First question that arises is, what system influences what? Logically, we think that the stronger one influences the other. Now, the stronger system, the one with a higher intensity, is not necessarily the best balanced one. So think of a energy healing practitioner, whatever the modality, whether it's shamanic, Reiki, you name it. And that person themselves, they're not in a really good place, physically or emotionally. Therefore, their energetic field at the time being doesn't function, it's not perfectly coherent or cohesive. Back to our starting point for the discussion today. In such situation, they will either take on a heavier blow coming from the very person they're trying to help and get even further destabilized in their attempt to help. You're dealing with a stage 4, terminal cancer, and you're trying to bring some comfort, some balance to the suffering person, and instead of that, they are going to destabilize you. They may be the stronger system. And this happens in proximity. So rule number 1, a little bit on a tangent here, is for the person, whoever engages with the practice of bioenergetic balancing, is to take care of themselves and make sure they are in a place of balance, in a place of inner cohesiveness, from where they can help influence through this training process. They can help guide the other person's energies. I get a sense of this question floating in the air. It looks like a sharp left. I promise it's not. I'm bringing it home in a second.
There's no sharp left on the show. Trust me, you're good.
Okay, so
It's free game.
Yeah, it's free game. Go where you want
free
to.
game.
I'm in.
Okay, so you might be wondering where crystals and other natural materials fell into this. Think of them as, just very shortly, as amplifiers, and they contribute actually to the one who uses them to deliver more, to deliver faster. Let's put it succinctly this way. Now let's take these things at a distance. What happens at a distance? First of all, the experiments conducted around the entanglement, particle entanglement, showed that actually information moves across distance. We can add to this the instantly, yes. It's in real time, so it has no delay.
It doesn't move, right? It just
exactly
is there.
So for those who are not familiar, this happened on twin photons. So photon, particle of light, split into two, separated into different containers in void, 5 miles away from one another, and whatever kind of stimulation, whatever behavior one particle would display in one lab due to the stimulation it was exposed to, the other particle, the twin particle, will in real time display the exact same behavior. So, and Danielle can tell us about Rupert Sheldrake and his observations on crows and his postulating. So I'll leave that to him in a moment. So bottom line, if we consider that there is more space, and I'm making bunny ears here, if you consider that there is more space than actually finite matter, and this space is supposedly filled with something that makes possible the traveling of information across distance, whatever applies in the proximity applies at a distance as well as above, so below. There is means of communication. I'm piggybacking on Danielle's example here. When you send things at a distance, you can do it with physical means, like use pigeons to deliver your letters, or you can do it differently. You can do it through sheer energy. And one small detail that I want to add to this is the reality of oneness. The fact that we do all partake from the same energetic substrate, and also the individual form. So they're both important, because in the individual form we become the one who delivers the intention, who really puts out, transmits, acts like a transmitter for that bit of information, which is basically encoded, energy encoded, to go to a certain destination, reach a certain target. And then, because there is the oneness, this information doesn't move in hops, doesn't move in skips. It actually travels along a continuum. And it all goes back to the intent, to the fact that the experimenter, the one who's doing, is also intrinsic part of the experiment itself and of the system. It goes back to the fact that it has to be really, really strong alignment and cohesiveness in between the intent, the mental, the emotional. So everything has to come together for this transfer really to occur and really to be possible. So it does require training. It's not that whatever I'm going to think randomly is going to reach a distant target or is going to manifest anything. And the rest of it is explained in Kybalion. You look at the principles, the hermetic principles, and you have lots of explanations there.
You see, if you look at what happened between you and Bobby, first of all, I would say that both him and you were very lucky, because what you describe, if I would show you an experiment with the car whose battery is drained, that you jumpstart with a car nearby using 2 cables, there would be no magic in it, right? What we see here, it's pretty much what happened. For all intents and purposes, I could describe this, right, like a sort of a jump, like a sort of a pacemaker, like that. But let's keep the jump start metaphor here, right? It's like you jumpstart Bobby, and he's been lucky enough that your heart was full of energy, because any affliction in your case would probably drain both of you, right? But what happens, so it is the same thing. Why wouldn't I accept it as such and begin to investigate? Why would I need to say, no, this cannot exist because I cannot measure it? Because there are a number of fallacies here. First of all, I am constructing instruments of measure based on my understanding and based on my perceptions at this moment. I cannot measure immaterial phenomena with material devices. Why would I? Right? Because I need some sort of adaptation. Here we can go into a whole discussion if mind is material or not, if mind is in the brain or is outside of the brain. We can go lots of places, and for this indeed I send you to Rupert Sheldrake, right? But let me get a little bit closer to close this segment by evoking a guy that I love. For me, he never died. Richard P. Feynman, Nobel Prize physicist. I recommend everybody to look on YouTube to all his lectures and everything. He taught me one thing, and he's been very nice in another instance. He taught me that at one time he says, listen, there are many people that have a problem when they don't know. I don't have a problem when I don't know. It's something fundamental here, because we hold to what we know with the fear that if we let that thing go, we would get lost in the ocean. So we grab our safety raft and we believe that it's the only thing that floats in the ocean. Who knows? There are many other things that float on the ocean. It was a guy that was, they say, able to walk, right? So this is, and the other thing is that he had tremendous contributions in quantum electrodynamics. So basically his work is in everybody's telephone today. It's not voodoo, right? And he's been, somebody thought that they would corner him, asking him, Mr. Feynman, do you believe that God exists? And his answer was, I do not have enough data to prove his non-existence.
I was listening to a physics book called The Field by Lynn McTaggart, and in the beginning she says a big fallacy is many people think you can prove things, and then there's a lot of things that aren't true that you can't disprove. She said it's the opposite. She said you can't ever at 100% like truly prove something, but you can truly disprove things. I thought was interesting. I immediately thought of God, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, more generally, a theory, in order to be acceptable as a theory, not as truth, it has to include the possibility of being demonstrably false. Right? So if a theory is non-falsifiable, means that you have to take it on pure faith, which is still not in this context is not acceptable, right? So a theory has to have the possibility, at least the mental possibility, that you can create. There might be instances in which you would be able to disprove it, and then if in those instances you prove it, then it's a solid theory.
Can I piggyback something here? The dismissive attitude, or the dismissive stance that's been occasionally taken in by purely materialistic scientists. They usually say, well, that's empirical evidence. Well, it's still evidence. And let's not forget that still close to the turn of the 20th century, we didn't know about the existence of germs. So Semmelweis, the scientist who demonstrated proof, in the end he proved the existence of germs. In the beginning he was thought to be as a lunatic by what was the medical profession back then, and their ability to investigate, and I'm going to really underline this, investigate. There is the tendency to disprove what we cannot measure and observe, let's put it this way, in very objective and very quantifiable ways. And that's the limitation. Germs in the beginning, they were not observable, they were not measurable. It doesn't mean they did not exist. It doesn't mean they weren't there. And in the same vein of thought, whoever could imagine 100 years ago the invention of, like this small device that you press some buttons and later don't even press buttons, you just touch a sort of a screen and you can see to whom you're talking. That was like really unimaginable. This was the realm of science fiction, and it is part of it's like commonplace today. It's part of our everyday reality. What I'm getting with all this is that new ways to measure, new ways to quantify and analyze emerge tremendously fast. Technology evolves very fast. So we do not know where and what we could observe things and with what devices 100 years from now. We had a microscope, we have an electronic microscope, we have telescopes. Who knows in what spectrum we'll be able to observe using what devices to really see, and everybody who doesn't have the ability to see it naturally could put these, let's say, glasses or some form of seeing, observing technology, so they could see auric fields and different beings that manifest in a different energetic spectrum than us. So I think it's a matter of time, and just being blatantly dismissive doesn't take us far.
If it comes to instruments of measure, we do not treat life or alive entities as instruments. If we would accept that as part of our inquiry, right, it would be a continuum. It's super funny. I mean, if you there are some anomalies that are unfathomable to me, right? Mm-hmm. So quantum physics exists for 100 years and some. Mm-hmm. Medical students everywhere in the world, to my knowledge, are only briefly exposed to quantum mechanics. They are taught only classical physics. In the classical physics, I will underline this, everything is a machine. The cause-action thing means that there is a machine. Everything is some kind of clock, more or less complex. Life is not like this. I started back then by being atheistic, being raised in an atheistic society. The first shock that made me become a believer was when I realized as a physicist that we cannot make an egg. We can build a large hadron collider, we can do things unimaginable, but we cannot create an egg. To make an egg, we need a hen. So, what is life? I cannot leave just biology, because biology relies on physics, right? It has to be. I know that me as a human, if you take me and you put it in a calorimeter, I will confirm all the thermodynamics. Yet I am thinking. My thinking is not part of the heat that I am producing. That's not measurable within the frame of physics. Why not enlarge it? Why? I don't care how we call it. Right? This is why I'm saying that I am all for a non-dogmatic approach. Dogmas, they have their role, because you cannot jump on a building. You have to scaffold it. And that scaffold is a dogma. So it has a constructive role. But you have to be aware at some point in time that you have to enlarge that scaffold. We have to extend it. You have to change the dogma, for lack of a better term. You have to evolve. You cannot sit there. And obviously you cannot refute what you do not understand or what your dogma doesn't include as something that doesn't exist.
Yes.
And then Danielle, so those of you that don't know, Danielle does mental health counseling and just love counseling and all. How would you see, like, I have to imagine, because you're working, she can't tell me anything about her clients, I don't truly know, but I have to imagine, like, the lack of faith has to affect people's mental health.
Oh, completely. But their paradigm is all made up of excuses because they live in their victim story. So I'm trying to shift them into coherence with the opposite, right? The law of polarity. Like, if you're going to be this depressed, you have the potential to be this happy. But you can't act in a way that makes you depressed over and over again. And I think the older they get, the more in that mindset they are, and it's harder to shake. But it's possible.
You describe a discoherent situation in which the person, they come to you to be healed, but they don't want to be healed because they find the refuge, or they find some justification, or they find some comfort.
Yes.
There's a quote I love, and it's, when you blame someone or something, you remove your power to fix it. It's from Ricky Williams, actually, the football player. But what I love about that is, my boy Kevin that was on the second show, he used to have these principles to live by. One of them is internal cause, external effect. Basically, what's going on inside creates your outside world. I don't know if you can use stuff like that in your counseling, but
Oh, yeah, I do.
But it's when somebody takes ownership of all the shit that's going on in their world because of entanglement, because of coherence, because of the physics of it, right? That's the science of it. And then they have faith that they can, like, I don't mean faith in like a religious sense. I mean, like, but I do kind of like faith in like following signs, or they're angels, or whatever the like terminology. I basically think of them all the same. Angels, fairies, like all of them very similar, but like those in between that like guide you, and then you just have to take ownership and take it to the next place. We were talking a little before the show, talking about kind of like how it looks like we're at a crossroads, right? More or less, like where the world's going to kind of take a change from material to spirit, hopefully.
Yeah, it looks like material civilization, let's put it this way, told us pretty much everything that it could possibly tell us. And now we have to take it from some mundane facts and push it further. And if we want to call this spiritual, I have nothing against, but a name is just a name. We have only to open up our minds, right? What I'm saying, mundane. If you get a cut, and if that cut is small, your body heals by itself. It's your body that heals, right? If the cut is bigger and you need to go to the doctor, or if you have a broken bone, then the doctor will help, the surgeon will put stitches, whatever. The doctor helps the healing. It's your body that heals. It's not the medicine, it's not the drug. The drug helps, favorizes that thing. It's not the iodine. The iodine prevents infection, but there is still that body with everything, with all that magic, if you want, with that all that wonder. It's beyond magic, it's wonderful what it's in a body, right? So if we embrace that and we begin to open to those things, then we have to integrate. I don't want to understand for a second that we have to throw materialism to the drain. No, because we need materialism. We need everything that we invented, right? We need to include. We need to integrate with a new approach. People have to become more spiritual because we all have to make more. We will still need plumbers. We will still need farming. So all those things are not, we don't want to get rid of it. I cannot believe that all of a sudden everybody will go into all kind of funny asanas and we'll only need to breathe. Right? No. And it would be a pretty unfunny place. Right? So the idea is how do we open and how do we help, including through podcasts like this, that I pray that will be, let's say, open minds of people that may happen to listen to them. How do we make those people, especially the young, to which we do not offer too many values? We offer them something very simple. Feynman, when he was talking about quantum mechanics that is very complicated, he used to say, you know what? If you want something simpler, too bad. I can't give it to you. Nature is as it is, not as I want it to be. So complexity is there. People need education, but at the same time they need an education from a new perspective, if you would ask me.
Yeah.
If I learned this kind of physics over classical, I would have paid attention. I just like, why do I have to learn it this way? They're like, you just have to. But it didn't do anything for us.
I mean, that's part of the reason why I got out of teaching. I mean, it's not the only reason, but I used to be a high school history teacher, for those that don't know. But I wanted to get into it to like have almost like philosophy discussions on like, well, this happened, and why do you think it created the world this way? And it was obviously not the way that teaching's done. So,
especially in high school.
Yeah. So obviously I didn't end up staying with it. But I just sidetracked myself on that. Actually, I'll use that to kind of tie into retrocausality. So that's probably the coolest thing I've seen in physics. I learned about it on Morgan Freeman's Through the Wormhole. Again, I'm probably going to keep shouting that show out on this because that show was so cool. But in it, and I think they proved it with the double slit theory, or not theory, double slit experiment, where, so those of you that aren't familiar, I'm going to have to use some jargon here, but they shoot photons through a slit, and depending on how they want it to behave, the photon will behave. It'll either be a wave or a particle. And then they changed it, and then it actually, they look back, and it had changed in the past after they changed it in the future, and they don't know what that means for us particularly, but they showed that actually is true, that the future has an equal impact on the past as the past on the future. So maybe my future self was like, yo, get out of teaching and teach people through free game. I don't know. But that's at the point I'm at now.
Okay, first of all, a note, okay? What things are valid only at some scales, right? So it would be nice if we could take this and do it at macro scale, but it's not. You need to do this experiment. It's true that you can do it in a high school today. I mean, you can buy equipment with few $100s. You can buy equipment on Amazon and repeat this thing in your basement if you want, right? The two-slit experiment is fundamental for one reason, if you would ask me, right? It gives two different results in the same setting, in absolutely the same setting. It gives two different results depending on whether you want to know where the photon went through or you don't want to know. If you don't want to know, what you see behind the screen is one pattern. If you want to know, obligingly, the photon will let you know, yeah, I passed through the right or through the left. But then you will have a different pattern. In absence of knowing, in absence of the consciousness wanting to know, The photon, take it as wildly as you can take it. The one single photon will go through both slits at the same time. There is no other explanation, because they repeat it. It's not when you throw zillions of photons and they combine somehow. They threw one photon at a time, and yet with one photon at a time, if you don't oblige that photon to tell you where it went through, you will get that pattern. And this was the fundamental, this is basically was the big shock of quantum mechanics, that showed that the observer is part of the experiment. And from here we can go maybe with a different occasion to something that I love. This difference only exists in English language, from what I know, the difference between consciousness and awareness. Okay, so, but that's for another time, not for now.
Well, shifting back to application and the paradigm shift itself, how do we educate with energy work, right, to our youth, the next generations?
Well, I would start by reinforcing the idea that education that the young generation receives has to be scientific, scientific that encompasses both the classical and the 100 years old modern quantum, but it has to be a science that is not divorced from spiritual. If anybody gets to understand very basic levels of that underline quantum mechanics, like this discussion that we just had about the dual behavior of the particle of light, this could be both informative and fun, entertaining, nice for children, for even young adults, even older adults, I subscribe, to participate in and learn from. The other end is, and it's totally understandable, the fear of engaging with spiritual and spirituality. There is little understanding that spiritual doesn't have to be 100% equated with religious. You can be spiritual even outside a very strict, very, so to speak, well-defined religion. So engaging with spirituality that's not completely strange from physics, engaging with science, physics, that's not divorced from spirituality. I think these are foundational. Where am I going with this? When I teach classes, when I teach my courses, Reiki, Bioenergetic healing, whatever little lectures, seminars I do, and they happen a lot in conjunction with yoga teacher training, I offer this information and encourage people to pursue and expand their horizon, because that's the only way. Unless you're willing to expand your horizon, even if information comes to you, if there's not the willingness to explore and learn, that information is just going to pass by. So there is a willingness, and the willingness comes from becoming aware that this is a necessity. Because if you do not engage with both spirituality and an understanding of phenomena, as it relates to physics, to biology, to chemistry, then there is no future, or the future is very bleak. And podcasts such as yours, I think, fulfills part of the existing gap. So just bringing information and getting young and old interested in this and learning about this.
I have an idea. If by the end, if you're open to it, what really helped me buy into Reiki was feeling the energy between my hands. What if we allowed our listeners feel their own energy?
Alrighty, toward the end, I can guide a little bit of this. Sure, I'd love to. Yeah, have a practical application of.
Nice. Yeah, that's actually a pretty cool idea.
You see-
So you guys will get a little Reiki training.
The question, to reiterate the question, what can we do with energy healing to help? First of all, it's pretty cost effective. It's not an expensive training. It's not something, okay? And it's directly applicable by one person to one's person. Because if you are going to do, if you are going to take just level 1 Reiki, or if you are going to do any form of energy healing, the first thing that you will do, even if you do nothing else, will be to learn how to heal yourself. Even if you do not learn completely how to heal yourself, but you learn how to feel yourself, and you increase your awareness about where you are and what's happening with you, this would have tremendous consequences, I can guarantee, both on a physical, physiological, health, immediate plane, but also if I want to look further at what I believe that it's the key of evolution, and this is to be aware of the beam in my eye rather than the mote in the eye of another. So people would learn to look at themselves in a positive, not in a selfish way, but in a constructive way, and this will make them take their life a little bit more in their hands.
Mm-hmm. We need that in counseling. They have to be self-aware but not so fixated on the ego state.
Correct. And if you would learn to make them feel their energy and see that this thing is applicable, and they can see that this changes from a place to another, and from a state to another, and from a day to another, they would begin.
Right.
Maybe some of them will be enticed to take better care of themselves.
And one thing, an example, it's kind of instinctual already, right? When you hurt yourself, you immediately put your hands there. Sure. Like a kitten licks her wounds, it's just instinctual to put our hands on something. And I think that's how Reiki was discovered to begin with.
Yeah, that played a role in it.
I was going to say that it's got to play a role in that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is interesting though, that like when you do get hurt, you immediately put your hands on the injury. It's again, I think are the material. I think I talked about this in like maybe the first, second episode, but like I think where we're at was necessary. Like we human beings had to go through the material to learn what we learned from the material, and then we have to find a balance between the spiritual. But I'm sure there was a period where all the healing was straight like energy healing, and then we had to learn about mending bones physically and then do the energy healing. I think some kind of combination is ultimately the goal. I mean, I know that's kind of our goal, is help people get to there. And then another is just kind of like you said, like I don't know what's going to happen, but as we become more automated, I 100% think people are going to start having to go back to the land, because the city is going to be outdated. The city was necessary for a period, but eventually it's going to be like the food. We don't know where the food comes from, the processes they're putting in it. Some people are going to have to go back to growing food. The city will be more for like probably like accountants and in those technical fields, where so many jobs I think are going to be lost to automation, and the only way to save that and people would be people getting back in touch with their roots.
You see, automation should free time for creation. Creation, though, comes back to education. So just freeing time is not going to make it.
Right.
You have to free time and put something in place to
because then the world will either look like Wall-E.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that? Everyone's just like overweight and the robots feed them. Or it could look like Wakanda, where it's like an advanced city, but everyone's kind of exploring their spiritual roots as well.
Yeah.
From Black Panther. Great movie.
That's where science is practiced in a way that's not divorced from the spirituality. I mean, with full awareness of what's your heritage, what's your connection, and your duty toward your land and toward your own culture. So it's that. But again, they're not mutually exclusive. They actually go perfectly hand in hand. I really like that example. Wakanda.
That kind of ties me into my weird view on aliens, or like ancient aliens, right? So again, I think when I hear people say all the time that science, we can't explain how people created pyramids and stuff like that, it goes back to what you've been saying, it's due to our own understanding of our own limitations. So like I have 3 different views basically on aliens. 1, aliens came and they helped us create these things. 2, they didn't come. It was human beings were actually just far more advanced. And then all the different mythologies and religions have like the flood or the deluge, and they might have been wiped out. And they might have used like different, like almost like Tesla thought Egyptians used a different form of electricity. So that would explain the perfect cuts and the moving of the stones that we can't explain now, assuming we know everything now, which obviously I don't think any of us here think that. Or the third would be, this is where it gets real trippy, almost like future humans like came back and like left clues, like this is where you need to get to. So like those are my 3 views on aliens.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody has a take on that, on like Stonehenge or what was the one my Uncle Mark was talking about? Some kind of there's something with like a perfect cut, these huge stones, and it was like there's no explanation for now. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's from what we have now. We don't know that we didn't have stuff better back then.
You know, I believe that again we humans, we are reductionists. If we got to know something, or if we believe that we got to know something, it's very difficult to take us out of that box. We create mental boxes. Maybe it's just it's a place to grow. It's like a snake that will, but a snake will shed its skin in order to grow, right? So we have to get out of our mental box. I do not know how the world was existing 10,000 years ago. First of all, some people said the Sphinx is 5,000 years or 3,500 years. The fact that somebody else says no, because the way it is aligned, if you accept that it has to be aligned with Sirius, with whatever, that would put it more like 10,000 years back. Once the academia said 5,000, and you've got maybe teacher, university professors and whatever and whatnot, based on that assumption, then it becomes a self-fulfilling thing. All of a sudden, if you get out of that, you are a pariah in the science. And okay, so I do not know what happens. Somebody comes, a guy from Denver, Colorado, went to the Sphinx. He was a geologist, specialist in how the rocks decay, and he's been shown the rocks that surround the Sphinx, and he said, yeah, that they look like water 11,000 years ago. I do not know what was there. To me, the fact that they use pulleys and whatever to create the pyramid is borderline ridiculous. I mean, if I would calculate, you know, the joules and the kilowatts and everything that they would need to put them there. First of all, we aren't able to do it today. If we would be challenged to build a pyramid today, we wouldn't be able to build it easily. Especially that they say that, it was built by just a pharaoh, right? So that it means in what, in 10, 20, 50 years?
Yeah, they did it in like that short time.
It's shorter than that tunnel in Boston, right?
Right.
Okay, so this is one. You would have I do not know how they did it. I do not know what science did they have, and maybe they lost it. We have a ton of science today that we can lose it if one of the guys presses a stupid button. We can go back to Iron Age or to Stone Age if we are lucky. Who knows? I don't know what happened.
And they keep finding older and older skeletons and fossils showing that people have been here longer than we anticipated.
Yes, and they find the giant skeleton somewhere in Siberia, and then would seem to corroborate some funny words in the Bible or in other places. You go to the Dogon tribe in Africa, and they know that there is a Sirius A and a Sirius B, and that you can only see that with the telescope. But they have their elders say it for I don't know how many 100 years. So I don't know. Again, we have to keep open.
I feel like it's a whole wormhole for another episode. I just want to be mindful of time before we can touch on the experience of energy.
So,
okay, let's get to the experience of energy.
Before getting into the experience of energy, I mean, this is kind of tied up a little bit. What we have discussed, what we know, what we don't know, technology before, after, in between. First image that came to my mind was that of a circle, like the dawning of the human species, and the attempt, to explain what surrounds you when you don't really have. This is assuming that nobody came to visit and explain anything by then. So you're trying to explain, and you connect with the divine, whatever the divine takes on, whether it's monotheistic or polytheistic, forces of nature, whatever has you. And so you start basically from the spiritual, and then you start developing technology, rudimentary but still technology, and that technology starts in a sense to kind of demystify some of the things that you thought they were 100% mystical in nature, like the fire. Oh, it's from gods or from heavens or from wherever, but then wait a minute, I can make it with 2 stones and some dry grass. So gradually it starts like a circle. You begin spiritual and you circle and you go materialistic, and then all of a sudden in all your materialism you realize the need for the spiritual, so basically you close. And I realize it's not really a circle, it's more like a spiral, because next time you begin again, you don't run around the same circle, you begin a little bit higher. So where the spiral goes, we don't know. Where the exact beginning was, we don't know. But I think the spiral model is a good one. And it's this combination, alternation of scientific thinking and spiritual call, draw, inclination, interest that alternates, and like the DNA helix, the two of them growing together. Wow. So yeah, we can go for the no, this is a sharp right or sharp left. So we can go for the Reiki. This is not unique to Reiki, the ability to sense energy and then direct it on a body part where you feel that you need it. So for all of you who are listening right now, if you are in the car, please pause. If you're driving, if you're operating any machinery, please don't do this. As we are talking, please take a break and come back to it later on. If you're at home, if you're comfortable sitting, then please close the eyes, uncross your legs, really take a nice deep breath and release it without feel that you're coming home into your own body. Closing the eyes, focus nicely on the breath. Feel each inhale expanding your chest and your abdomen. Hold the breath for a count of 2. And then slowly exhale. Hold the breath at the bottom of the exhale for a count of 2. Do a few more cycles of this. Inhales, short breath retention. Exhale, short breath retention. And then with your eyes still closed, or maybe you want to half open your eyes, bring your palms together and gently rub them against each other. So have your palms touching. You don't have to rub them hard to develop heat. That would bring bias into what you're going to sense, but just rubbing them a little bit against each other. Now place your hands wider apart, facing each other at a distance that's wider than your shoulders, wider than your chest, definitely. And with the eyes closed or half open, what do you notice in your palms, in your fingers? What do you sense in between the hands? How that space appears to you, sensory-wise? If there's nothing there, try to move the hands a little bit closer, very relaxed, not stiffening elbows or shoulders. You can move them closer, you can move them farther apart. There's no right or wrong to this. It could be any sensation. Okay. Bring your hands together once again. Wrap your palms again slowly. Hold your palms together steady and ask yourself what part of your body right now requires a little bit of care. And notice where instinctively your hands are drawn to. Could be the face, the head, the chest. Let the palms float in that direction spontaneously. Don't think it. Could be that one hand be on the belly and the other one on the tip of your nose. Just making this up. And let your palms make contact with your body. Notice how your body responds to this. And hold it for as long as it feels pleasant. Hold it for as long as there is some sensation, or until you'll feel your hands like peeling themselves off your body automatically. And whenever you feel complete, you can open the eyes, and this is it. So this would be like a mini self-treatment that you can undertake at any time. Highly recommended before going to bed, or those moments at work when you feel particularly under stress, under pressure of any sorts.
I feel so relaxed.
I'm glad you
Do
enjoyed
it
it.
once an hour on your eyes if you spend the
yeah.
day in front of a computer like I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like a pulsing when I
Yeah.
do it. It's so cool.
What did you feel? How was it for you?
Relaxed.
I felt relaxed.
Yeah.
My hands felt warm when I finished and put them back on the table.
I could see them. So yours were like having this halo right around them, so glittering. Yeah.
Super
His
cool.
aura is really big, as we have identified.
You can see them. It's like this glitter.
Oh, one last story to end on.
Yes, please.
I don't know if you were the one that told me it, or it might have been Higgs or something like that in physics. One of his friends was a clockmaker, and he went to his friend's clock store one day, and he got there and he noticed every single clock was ticking at the exact same second, like every single one. And he said to his friend, "Hey, it's super cool. Like, what made you align every single clock? How long did that take?" And then his friend said, "I didn't. It all changed when I brought this big grandfather clock. They all synced to that."
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
she shared that.
Yep, that's something that I bring to every single class, level 1, bioenergetic healing or Reiki or anything. And this is to make the point of the importance when you step in a room, to deliver energy balancing, energy healing. You gotta be the heaviest pendulum in the room, so you can help the other person align to what is a healthy level of vibration, to reach homeostasis, not necessarily vibrate in sync with you, but reach a level of cohesiveness that it is healthy, guiding them in that direction.
I've been using
Is
that
that-
example in my sessions, and I
Yes.
say you have to have big clock energy.
You're the big grandfather clock, and that's your energy.
Yeah,
And
the physicist's name is Christian Huygens. He was a
Huygens.
Dutch physicist. The phenomenon is resonance. But because you said something about Danes, I'll tell you a nice story about Niels Bohr, because he was Danish, right? So he's been given a small castle by the Danish government as for his contribution and whatever. Okay, and on the gate of his castle was a horseshoe. He was reputed for not believing in superstitions. So a journalist asked him, "Mr. Bohr, We all know that you don't believe in superstitions. Why do you have a horseshoe on the gate of your castle? And he says, well, as the story goes, that he says, you know, young man, they say that it brings luck even if you don't believe in it.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
These are things that you can't. I mean, whether you believe it or not, they still have an impact. They still have an effect on you. Yep.
Well, guys, that was awesome. I know we appreciate it. I want to thank Mike and his son who's helping us out today at Gwinnett Radio X.
Thank you, guys.
As always, you know, hopefully you guys got something out of this. I have to imagine everybody did. We'll end the show with try to be big clock energy and, and make sure people feel your energy when you walk in the room and it's coherent or resonance. Real quick, what is resonance? Sorry, I will dwell on
It's
this,
the
but
ability of two systems of being synchronized, being in phase.
so like coherence.
It's connected with coherence. Coherence would be between two waves. Resonance would be, you know, you are in resonance with you if your energies vibrate in a way that is good for you. I don't know how to say it. Okay, so a whistle
Harmonious.
resonates on a given frequency. A resonance is if you want, it's favoring some vibrations while canceling others that are not in line with who you are.
Makes sense.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
Yes, visit Daniela Simina's classes, Bioenergetic Healing, and Reiki Practitioner classes
If you're in
at
the-
Johns Creek and Plum Creek Yoga websites.
And then
Thank
how
you.
can people follow you? Is that possible?
Oh, I'll try to. Yeah, I'm inching there. I hope that in a couple of months I'll
All right.
have something.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it, guys.
Yes, thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you. It
Thank
was
you
a
so much
pleasure.
for having us.
Bye.